Okay, Brittany, we are live and you may begin when you're ready.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2023 Candidates Forum. We have here tonight Ed Abbott, the Elections Committee Chair, Larry Butler, the COO, and Mike Leone and Sean Barami with our communications team who will be assisting us here tonight. We're going to start with Ed Abbott. He's going to say a few words to kick this meeting off, and then we'll get right into our agenda.
Okay, thanks, Brittany. Welcome to the Reston Association's 2023 Board of Directors Candidate Forum. I'm Ed Abbott, Chairman of the Elections Committee. On behalf of the committee, I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. I especially want to thank the staff for their effort in planning and organizing this forum. For this election, the membership will elect 5 Reston Association board members, 1 at-large director for a 3-year term, 1 at-large director for a 2-year term, 1 at-large director for a 1-year term, 1 Hunters Woods Dogwood District Director for a 3-year term, and 1 apartment owner representative for a 3-year term. This year, elections will be open Wednesday, March 1st, and run through Friday, March 31st. Members may cast their votes online or by mail. Please remember that a quorum of 10% of the membership is required for each open seat on the board for the election results to be valid. As a non-stock Virginia corporation, RA requires a board of directors. RA members elect the board. In turn, the board is responsible to the members for setting policy, evaluating the CEO, and approving the budget. These duties and responsibilities, among others, are included in the RA governing documents. This evening, we'll have an opportunity to ask each candidate's position on various issues within the community. To ask the candidates a question, you may raise your hand using the hand raise button located on the participant tab in the Zoom, or type your question using the chat feature. Also, Elections Committee has received questions prior to this evening, which we will pose to the candidates. We have limited time for this evening's forum. As a result, we will pose as many questions as time will allow. We will alternate between those who were submitted prior to this evening, those that are posed by tonight's attendees by raising hands on the first come, first served basis, and those that might be submitted by the Zoom chat feature. Let's begin with opening remarks. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to make an opening remark. Once the candidate has made their opening remark, we will begin the question and answer portion of the evening.
Wonderful, thank you. And so just to kind of reiterate some of what Ed has stated, we're going to ask everyone just to be mindful of the time. We are giving candidates 5 minutes to make opening remarks. Once you've hit the 30-second mark, Sean is going to let you know, so he may interrupt you just to let you know that you're nearing that 5 minutes, and we're going to ask you to wrap up to give everyone equal amount of time to make their opening remarks. As we get into the questions, you're going to have 1 minute each to answer your questions. This will be rotated. We received about 30 questions from various residents and members. And so those will be in random order. Obviously, we won't be able to get to all of those questions this evening. So the questions that are going to be asked, we've put them in a randomized order to try to see if we can at least get one of each person's questions asked at this meeting tonight. So what I'm going to do is pull up our presentation here. Okay, and go over our agenda here. Sorry, give me one moment. Let me move this out of the way. Again, so tonight we're going to have our 3-year at-large candidates and our apartment owners representatives speak tonight. I don't believe I see Mr. Collins on this evening. So we may just have to go in the order of the three candidates who are present this evening who will be presenting, and that's going to be Jean Zapfel, John Farrell, and Margaret Perry. So just starting here with our opening remarks, we've got Mr. Farrell up first. We've got 5 minutes, and your time starts now. Oh, there you go, John. Need you to unmute there. Can't hear you, John.
Try that.
There you go. All right. Time starts now.
I'm John Farrell. I'm running for re-election of the RA Board of Directors because we can do better. First of all, I want to thank all of you for allowing us to share our thoughts about Reston Association with you tonight. While living in Reston for over 30 years, my 4 kids went to Terracet, Hughes, and South Lakes High School. They went to RA camps, took swimming lessons at RA pools, and played ball on RA fields. My service as president of the Colonial Oaks Townhouse Cluster has informed me of the many unique issues facing our 135 townhouse clusters, including the strengths and weaknesses of the RA covenant process and the recent massive increase in trash hauling fees and cuts in services. As an attorney, I've represented RA clusters and formed homeowners and condominium associations. I've represented environmental organizations, Virginia local governments, local churches, and nonprofit organizations. I teach Virginia's zoning law to attorneys and engineers, and I'm the author of the leading monograph on Virginia zoning law. Between the RA-sponsored bird walks and my service on the RA Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, I've visited every RA facility. During my 9 short months on the RA board, I have actively promoted the transparency for all board decisions. We have ended the practice of voting in secret session. I've employed my land use expertise to seek quality of life enhancements to the Reston Master Plan. I've spearheaded Reston's first professional parks and recreation survey to better understand the desires of our 63,000 residents. That survey will launch in May of this year. I've successfully advocated to save all of the open space at Hidden Creek and Reston National Golf Course. I've championed the restoration of Shadowwood Pool and supported the reconstruction of Thoreau Pool. Together with my colleagues, we have hired a highly qualified chief executive officer. We have pursued county approval for the conversion of the unused ball field at Hunter's Woods into a neighborhood park, and have pursued county approval for enhancement of the Hook Road recreational area. That's a lot in a short time, but there's lots more to do. If elected, I will demand that all new residential development near the Silver Line join Reston Association. Just adding existing Metro apartments would expand RA's assessment base and bring in more than $1.1 million in new RA revenue. That will hold down RA assessments for the rest of us by approximately $50 to $100 each. Exempting new apartments from joining RA puts the 30 existing apartment complexes in RA at a competitive disadvantage and would accelerate the deterioration of the 4,100 dwelling units in those 30 apartment complexes. I would demand that recreational money from residential developers be given to Reston Association to help pay for the renewal of our pools, tennis courts, pathways, ball fields, and other facilities. I would assure that the new master plan preserves and enhances the quality of life for Restonians, not just maximizes developer profits and county tax revenues. I will ensure that the association hire a highly qualified chief financial officer to responsibly meet RA's capital needs. I bring my experience as a townhouse cluster president to seek solutions to surging trash hauling fees and reverse service cuts. I would continue to enhance the board's transparency by requiring all votes to be made in public. I would require that RA does its part for our environment by adopting a clear plan to convert RA's vehicle fleet to electric motors. I would encourage and support the redesign of the RA website to improve the ease of use for all RA members and increase the security of the database to protect your personal data. And I would preserve RA's legacy of inclusion of all socioeconomic groups at all stages of a family's life cycle. To do all that and much more, I ask for your vote for the 3-year at-large term. I look forward to your questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time. All right, and we're going to move into our next opening remark.
Brittany, you've been muted.
Can you hear me now? Sorry about that.
Yes.
So we're going to move on to our next candidate, and that's going to be Miss Margaret Perry. Margaret, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Brittany.
Your time starts now.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Perry. Buenas noches. Me llamo Margaret Perry. Mi español es muy limitado. ¿Tú necesitas ayuda? Encontrar al alguien. For the last 12 plus years, I have been a Reston resident, and I have served as a Reston Association Board District Director for the last 7 months. I've held a variety of jobs: paralegal, small business owner, registrar administrator, and currently I'm a senior technical support advisor for a help desk with a federal contractor. For me, being involved in the community has included volunteering, serving on boards and committees, and attending local events. By being involved, I've gained an understanding of issues facing the community and the needs and concerns of many residents. Reston, which was genius in its conception, was built on a strong foundation that offers valuable lessons for our future. Reston's success in creating a vibrant, sustainable community is a testament to the power of collaboration and a smart, long-term vision. By continuing to learn from Reston's example and building on its legacy, the future of our community looks bright. Our best hope for a continued strong and vibrant community that serves the needs of all residents is to work collaboratively with stakeholders from diverse sectors. This collaboration will allow for smart and sustainable planning and development as our community works together towards the common goal of preserving Reston's amenities, facilities, and open space for the benefit of the current and future generations. Effective collaboration requires trust, communication, and a willingness to work toward mutually beneficial solutions. It also requires a recognition that maintaining, repairing, and upgrading our facilities and amenities is a complex and long-term process that requires sustained effort and commitment from all stakeholders, especially our RA members. If elected, I intend to work with the rest of the board and our CEO to implement plans and policies that continue to move RA towards a stable and financially sound future where our amenities and facilities are a priority based on member input. During my campaign, I've had the opportunity to speak with RA members, both in person and electronically. I've enjoyed receiving feedback, answering questions, and helping educate on various points. I ask that these conversations continue to occur with all board members and staff. I believe I speak for most, if not all, that we want the community to be more involved, and that starts one conversation at a time. Anyone is welcome to reach out to me via my website at www.mperry-reston.com. I also invite you to take my brief survey, and if you provide your email, I will respond. Reston Association will have a community-wide survey in late spring, early summer, as John mentioned, and I encouraged everyone to participate. As the board liaison to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, I have had the honor of working with those committee members and the subject matter expert, Jane Brom, along with staff to see that survey come to fruition. The survey will allow us to gain valuable insight into the concerns and priorities of the community. We are excited to receive that data and use it towards shaping the future of Reston. I appreciate every candidate running for an open seat on the board this year and all years. As we all know, we cannot all win, but I am personally grateful to all candidates for offering their time, energy, and skills to represent the members of Reston Association. And thankfully, RA members include not only homeowners, but renters too, like me. And that makes Reston Association special because every voice is important. Thank you for considering me as your choice.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. We're going to ask Mr. Zapfel, Gene Zapfel. Please unmute your mic there.
Yep,
And
I'm unmuted. Thanks, Brittany.
your 5 minutes starts now.
Okay, great. Thanks. And thanks for the opportunity to have this conversation today. I wanted to start out with just explaining why I'm here. Brittany, I don't think am I on the screen?
You are on the screen.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I want to make sure that I kind of set the frame for why I'm here. I had heard, of course, that the number of available seats on the board was really substantial this year. More than half of the seats are being replaced. And I think that was important for me to feel like I was able to step up and help where help is needed. John and Margaret are both great folks, and either one of them will do a great job. And frankly, I just want somebody to be stepping up and helping Reston. That's really what it's all about. So I'm here to really offer myself and my time and my energy as an asset to the community. I've got some experience in Reston here. Actually, when I first moved here in 1985, my wife and I lived in Colts Neck Apartments for a little while. And then we moved west, but we've been back here in Reston for about 8 years now. And for the last 3 years, I've been on the Reston Association Covenants Committee. So I very much understand how the covenants work and how the organization functions from that perspective. I've got a lot of experience working with nonprofits, whether they're national or local. Some are professional associations, some are social service, et cetera. But I'm very experienced in working with groups of senior leaders as well as constituents to bring folks together. So really, I'm all about collaboration, and that's really what I want to bring to this position and this opportunity here. I don't have the experience that John has, and I don't have the experience here in Reston that Margaret has. So I just want to talk a little bit about my perspectives on various components of what I think is important here. First, I think and foremost is governance. What's the role of the board? The board is really an oversight body to make sure that the RA team is doing what they need to do to deliver the services to the Reston citizens. The RA board is not an operating arm. We help the operating arm of the RA team run the association. I think our role is to coach and mentor and support, and also, of course, have a long-term perspective on what direction the Reston Association and the entire board, et cetera, needs to go. I also want to talk just for a minute about development. I agree completely with what John said and what Margaret said. The development needs to focus on the TSAs, and I think it will. I know Reston Association doesn't have the greatest voice in the TSA directions, but I do think we can be heard, and I do think we need to actively participate in that. I do think that the local communities around the TSAs should have a special voice, and they should be heard, and we should facilitate that, make sure that that voice is part of the conversation. As John mentioned, the comprehensive plan and master plan are critical. I know the RA has been through a recent revision of those, and those are wonderful documents and really moving us in the right direction. Talk a minute about access. I think it's really important that all of the amenities within Reston are available to every single person within Reston. I know I've taken great advantage of a lot of the different amenities here, as is my wife, as we've been here now for over 8 years. And it's something that I want to see continue, and I want to see continue the development of amenities, but very importantly, make sure that the amenities we build are sustained, which kind of leads you to the conversation around investment. I think of critical importance for an association as mature as Reston, we have to maintain what we've built. Yes, we want to build new amenities, but it's very important that the amenities that we have are up to speed in terms of they're modern, they're safe, they're delivering what the citizens of Reston need. And that's a critical part of maintaining the feel and the appreciation for how Reston as a community works. And then lastly, I know there's a million topics and more will come up, but lastly, I want to talk a little bit about budget. I know we all are aware of the increasing budget every year. I know that we—
Just so you know, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I know we need to be thoughtful about that budget, but budgets increase, salaries increase, the cost of living increase, the cost of mulch increases. All those things have to increase appropriately. They have to be managed, but they have to be acknowledged that it's something that's necessary for a healthy association. I love John's idea of bringing in the new apartment complexes. That would provide another source of revenue for the RA, and I think that's a great thing. So I look forward to the conversations tonight. and look forward to the opportunity to help and would look forward for your vote as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jane. All right. So at this point, we're going to start getting into the questions. Just to let you all know, we're going to go over a few basic reminders, some rules for tonight's meeting. We want a fair and pleasant Q&A session this evening. So just general rules of debate. The moderator will alternate between the candidates in offering the opportunity to respond first. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer. The candidate speaking will have 1 minute to respond to the question. As noted earlier, Sean Barami is going to keep an eye on the time for us this evening. So once you've exceeded your 1 minute, we will not mute you, but you will have 10 seconds to wrap up. And we do expect you to honor that because we would like to make sure everyone has the opportunity to answer questions this evening. A verbal warning will be given once your time is up per question. General rules for members. Questions must be relevant to all candidates. So any questions that any of the membership who are attending this evening that you have for the candidates, it must be relevant for all candidates and not just generalized for, a particular district or apartment owners or anything like that. Each candidate should be able to answer whatever question that you pose this evening. Members posing questions live at the event will have 10 seconds to speak. So you'll have 10 seconds to ask your questions to the candidates. Again, just like we're asking the candidates to keep to their time, we're asking the members tonight to keep to theirs. So you'll have 10 seconds to ask your question, and they will have 1 minute to answer. Questions must be posed in the form of a question as opposed to a statement. And it must be open-ended. So questions that you're asking, please make sure that you phrase them as questions and not general statements. And no question constituting a personal attack on any candidate shall be allowed. So we want everybody to play safe to this evening. All right. So with that said, we're going to get into the first question, which our Elections Committee Chair, Ed Abbott, will take the floor to ask the first question this evening.
Thanks, Brittany. What do you consider are the most important characteristics and qualities of a board member?
Okay, and first up, we have Margaret Perry to answer this question.
Thank you, Ed. The most important characteristics or traits for a board member, first and foremost, honesty, the ability to have your board members and your RA members and the RA staff trust that you are going to make the right decisions based on the information at hand. I also am a huge believer in collaboration and working together. The best way to continue to move forward is for all of us to come together, seek out information, and make an informed decision for the benefit of all, or at a minimum, the majority, but hopefully all.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. And next we have Mr. Zapfel. Gene?
Sure, thanks. I think what Margaret said was terrific, and I want to add to it and not repeat it. I do think, though, it's hard work. I think that you need to come to a meeting prepared. You need to be able to express your opinion, but express your opinion in a very respectful way. We also need to be very thoughtful about being stuck on an opinion. Just because we think it's our way doesn't mean it's the right way. There's 9 voices in the room, and all 9 voices need to be heard. Collaboration is critical, of course, when you have that many voices. There's going to be some people who are more aware and more understanding of a particular topic. You need to respect that. But I do think I like the honesty point, but I also think the idea of being respectful to your partners and always willing to move the ball forward and not go backwards and drag people down.
Thank you, Gene. Mike is not here this evening, so John, you can go ahead and start.
Certainly. I think the most important thing that a board member has to do is be prepared. We get our board package 3 or 4 days before a meeting. We also get our committee packages several days before the meeting. And I think it's absolutely essential that a board member review that package and be familiar with it. Frequently, after reviewing that package, questions are going to come up, or motions are going to be made. And we need to take the time to write up our motions and share them with our colleagues. And if there are questions to staff, to get those questions into the staff before the meeting, so that the staff is ready to answer the questions and they don't get blindsided. I also think that there's a need for humility. Not every motion is going to pass. Not every motion that you vote in favor of is going to go your way. And there are nights when, you may be on the losing end of a 5-4 vote, and it happens. You have 9
John, you have 10 seconds.
people. So, understanding and accepting that you may not always get your way.
Thank you. All right. Okay, so now at this point, we're going to take a question from the floor. If you'd like to ask a question to the candidates, please raise your hand. Any questions for the candidates this evening? If you'd like to ask a question from the floor, now's the time you can raise your hand. Okay, I've got a question here in the chat. The question is, should candidates be running in multiple simultaneous elections, country, state, RA, and can they ethically serve in multiple positions? Okay. Start that question, we're going to go with Eugene.
Finding my unmute.
There you go.
So I think it's interesting that people who feel they have the time and energy to be able to do multiple things, I think it's fine. I do think you want to be thoughtful not to put yourself into a position of being having any potential conflicts of any kind. I know it's not my intention to try to do 2 things that might put me in conflict. And I think most honorable people won't do that. But yeah, I mean, I think if people feel they have the energy and time to be able to do that and can successfully execute both roles, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, thank you. John?
I agree with Gene. I think RA demands about an hour and a half to 2 hours of my day, every day, on average. And you have to balance that with the other demands on your time, a family and a profession. I'm still a practicing lawyer. And so there's no question you can do it ethically. We have a code of ethics that's imposed on us by the state law. And so if there were to come a time that there was a problem, I'd declare it. We're required to declare any conflict. I mean, I also serve as the president of my homeowners association, and haven't seen that be a problem during my service on the RA board. So it's a matter of managing your time and managing it well. And I absolutely believe you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Thanks, John. Okay. Margaret?
Yes, thank you. As far as ethically, there is nothing ethically wrong with it. The reality is it's not something I would do, only because I want to make sure that I'm giving my attention and my full 100% to whatever specific group I'm working on. Now, having said that, John is correct. I do sit on other boards. I do other things. So I am a woman who has multiple things going on every day, all week long. So, it is possible to juggle it. I do think it, depending on what positions you're running for, that may be a hard juggle, and I would hate to see any balls get dropped, but there certainly isn't a technical or ethical problem with it.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. So I'm going to start with one of the submitted questions here on our list this evening. And that question is, what strategies do you believe should be undertaken or maintained to balance the board's oversight of the association? Okay. We're going to start with John.
Sure. That's pretty easy. The documents make very clear that the board acts with the CEO. That's who we interface with. And everybody else, except for the general counsel, reports to the CEO. The board, we're working through a resolution to make it clear that the general counsel is hired and fired by the board, and that'll come up, I guess, at the next board meeting. But everybody else works for the CEO. So what's essential is for the board to interact with the CEO. And I'm pretty sure this board, at least as long as I've been on this board, that's been the case. And so that's what the documents require. And that's what has been our practice. And I have not heard instances of any of my fellow board members going outside of that channel of communication. And that way we have one individual to hold responsible for the performance of the association, and that's Matt Cummins, our new CEO.
Thank you, John. Okay. I've got Margaret, you next.
As far as strategies to balance board oversight, John is right. We have very clear guidelines currently set. I personally am a very big believer in that our board is for governance. We are here to help provide policy and procedures to our CEO, who then runs the day-to-day operations. The day-to-day operations is not this board's goal. However, are there times when the board needs to be involved with incidences that happen or be made aware of things? Absolutely. And I think that both staff, our current CEO, Matt Cummins, and our attorney do a very, very good job of making sure that the board is aware of anything that we need to be aware of, and that all of them hopefully know that they can come to any one of us if they ever had concerns. So I do think that we're on a good path, and governance is the board's main
10
job.
seconds.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, Jean?
Sure, thanks. I would say that I have no direct experience with this board, but we all read the newspaper. We all hear things that you hear about management boards and oversight boards that are too active. And I think it's a balance. And I think it's a matter of following the guidance, making sure that our CEO has the breadth and room to be able to do his particular job that he has to do. But Margaret's point of having access to the board, I think, is important. I don't think it requires a separate set of strategies other than a good group of people working collaboratively with the management team. So again, I don't have the specific experience of whether it's worked great in Reston or not, but I would say that, the guidance is pretty clear on how to make that happen.
Thank you, Jean. Okay. Next here, we're going to go to another question here in the chat. Name 3 specific things that you have done to defend the golf courses from development. This is going to start with John.
Sure. So not only am I a supporter of Rescue Reston, but I have been in regular contact with the supervisor's office and with Walter Alcorn to encourage him to make the declarations that he ultimately wound up making, to make it clear that he would not support any change to the Reston Master Plan as it related to the Reston National Golf Course. He had previously made that statement on the Hidden Creek back in, I think it was 2021. So it was a pretty regular contact that I had with Walter to say, come on, it's time to stop the anxiety for the people who lived around, the Reston National Course, to let them know that you're not going to be pursuing comp plan amendment at that property.
Okay. Thank you, John. Next, we have Margaret.
Yes, so I've, reaffirmed our land use resolution 6, which states that the golf courses should remain golf courses during my time here on the board. But also over the years, I am a Rescue Reston supporter. I've sent emails to our local officials as we've been asked to do. But I've also participated in a number of Rescue Reston events, either in the limelight or behind the scenes. And I am often requested to edit, review those emails before they go out to the Rescue Reston membership. So I have been supporting Rescue Reston since its inception, and I will unfortunately stand by them for 10 more years if that's required. But I do hope that at some point our lovely Rescue Reston group can retire and enjoy some extra and needed time off.
Thank you, Margaret.
They've earned it.
Jean?
I have a very easy answer to that. Nothing. I have not been part of the conversation. I followed the conversation. I'm always open for new and fresh ideas. If a part of our infrastructure, part of our amenities is in trouble and not working, we have the responsibility to make it work. I am not suggesting that the golf courses don't work, but I'm saying that the way we approach issues like that is very important. In this particular case, I don't have any experience working with that to date.
Thank you, Jean. All right. The next question is going to come from our COO, Larry Butler.
All right. Thank you, Brittany. And it's nice to see so many people interested in this event tonight. So let me go ahead and start. And I think the first person responding to this, Brittany, will be back to Margaret, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So the question is, do you fully understand Reston's master plan, and how committed are you to support the master plan?
Ooh, okay. Do I fully understand Reston's master plan? I do believe I have a good concept. I do believe that I would feel very comfortable supporting Reston's master plan. Do I feel that I know absolutely everything in there, word for word, and could recite everything to you without having to look it up? Absolutely not. I would have to look things up. As far as supporting what we have provided to the county as what we would like to see in the Reston comprehensive plan, absolutely 100%. I was actually on a task force with a few of our board members a few months ago, where we put together a summarization that we then passed out to RA members and others. You didn't have to be an RA member. We were happy to share that information with everyone in Reston, whether they were an RA member or a RTC member or just in the TSA. So I would absolutely stand behind what we have asked Fairfax County to affirm in the Reston Master Comprehensive Plan. Absolutely.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, next we've got Jean.
Actually, Larry, one of the reasons I'm sitting here in this chair with my name in the hat is because I read the plan, and it's very good. It's very good. I'm excited about the kind of thinking the group is doing, the DRB, the board itself. That very much excited me to think about how can I be part of the conversation going forward. Not just how do you create something for 10 years, but how do you make it happen and make it work? And that's fun. And for me, that's fun. I think that I'm very supportive of the plan. Am I ready to take a test on it today? No. Would I be willing to read it one more time and then take a test? Sure. But I do think that it will be a very interesting time as new development happens, particularly around the TSAs, and the demand on services is going to continue to increase. And how do we adjust? How do we adapt to that? So that plan has to keep changing. I love the concept, completely agree with the direction, but it's a living document, and that is going to continue to mature. And I look forward to being part of that.
Thank you, Jean. And John.
Well, Larry, it's 172 pages. I don't think anybody knows it front to back, but I did attend, I think, more than 2/3 of the task force meetings and offered comments on most of them. Further, I drafted the RA changes to the task force draft that the board ultimately adopted, and that covered, I don't know, about 20 or 30 pages. And so I fully anticipate that there will be a role going forward in advocating for the changes to the master plan, the task force recommendations to the master plan, going forward for RA. And I look forward to the opportunity to participate in that. Generally speaking, we've added some new ideas and new concepts that the county has never considered: equity, community health, and other chapters that hopefully will, and apparently already causing the county to look at their policy plan and to include those kind of provisions in the countywide policy plan. So not ready for a quiz, but I've done a lot of the edits.
Thanks, John. All right. We have another question that was submitted in the chat. The question is, I listened to the BOD meeting the other night and hear Cameron Adams state that it takes 3 to 4 weeks once an application is submitted. Is that a reasonable time period, or is more staff needed? Is the board aware that it can take 3 to 4 weeks before an application is accepted? What do the candidates believe is an acceptable time frame? Okay. We're going to start with Jean.
I can't tell you whether that's an acceptable time frame, but I am a firm believer in understanding benchmarks and holding organizations to benchmarks. And that, I think, would be something worth looking into. Now, are more staff needed? More staff are always needed. No matter what you're doing, more staff is always needed. And Brittany, you know that as well as anyone. The issue is always going to be, is it a matter of, is it the investment that the institution should make, right? Should RA spend more time to drive that response time down to a week, down to 2 days? I mean, I think that's something that needs thought and balance. Again, I'd be happy to participate in that kind of an analysis of what is a typical and what is considered a good response plan, and then what are costs and benefits of doing it that way. You have to continue to balance the cost against the benefits.
Thank you, Jane. John?
So when I'm liaison, one of 2 liaisons to DRB, and what the DRB is looking at when they have an application in front of them is literally dimensions down to what inches of changes to a building in most cases. And so that requires a back and forth so that when the DRB makes a decision, the staff can later go out and look at what was approved and know that what was built complied with what was approved. So it can take some time to make sure that all the information that our volunteers on the DRB have in order to enable them to make a decision that can be enforced going forward. 2 to 3 weeks strikes me, if that's truly an average, that strikes me as a little strong, but not way out of line. The county can sometimes take months, 2 and 3 months, to accept applications that somebody makes for a building permit or a zoning or a site plan or a subdivision, and they require a lot of detail also. So 2 or 3 weeks may be longer than I'd like to see. I think it ought to be a shorter time frame to turn it around, and it may be that we need more hand-holding between the staff and the applicants.
Thank you, John. And Margaret?
I know that at our last board meeting, we were looking at certain policies and procedures, and one of those, Cam and the DRB group had requested, or DRB committee had requested some changes to try and speed that process up some, or at least not cause delays. Let me phrase it that way. It was requested that that language be returned back to them for some additional guidance, some additional, just meshing it out, providing additional meat. So I do think that the group is working on what can we do to give a better response time. But there is a lot involved. And some of the delays right now are part of the involved parties and who gets the right to provide comments and all of that. So I do know that is something that they are looking into, working on, and I do hope that they will get that down from 3 to 4 weeks to a more reasonable time frame soon, as they appear to be working towards.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. And I have a question that was submitted here. The question is, virtually every candidate wants fiscal accountability by RA. Fiscal accountability means a focus on both revenue and expenses. My question has two parts. First, beyond the annual assessments, what are your specific ideas to discuss with management how to generate more revenues for RA? Second, the expenses of RA are significantly weighted to payroll and related costs. What are your ideas to discuss with management on how to manage this significant element of RA's expenses while maintaining RA's amenities? We're going to start with John.
Sure. I think the first thing is, let's get all the residential units in the area to contribute. So if we can get the apartments that have already been built and are going to be built to be included in the Reston Association assessment area, that's the way to bring in the most money. There have been over the last several years attempts to bring in what we call non-assessment revenue. And frequently those efforts were going to cost the association more money than they were going to bring in. We do bring in a fair amount of non-assessment revenues by selling passes or allowing non-members to join our camps or use our pools or our tennis courts. So that can be and has been a source of revenue. As far as expenses go, our biggest expense is personnel. And to me, the most important thing on personnel is, are they giving good customer service?
That's 1
That's
minute.
the most important thing.
Brittany, you've been muted.
Thank you. Margaret, you're next.
Thank you. Yes. So external revenue, as John mentioned, we do look at non-assessment revenue. Besides pools and camps and tennis courts, that also includes those pool rentals. So those unfortunate days when your local pool may be closed for the day, it's because other camps, other groups, other organizations have rented that space, and that money coming in is money that is then used as non-assessment revenue. There also, staff is always looking at what other types of things can we do, what will work, what won't work. And we're always open to hearing ideas from our members. If you have ideas, please send them in. We want to hear them. It may be something we've reviewed before or something we've already thought about, but we're happy to have the input because maybe you're thinking of something new that we haven't thought of or a different take on something we have thought of. As far as the staff heavy, so here's the thing with that.
It's 1 minute.
We have to have staff. We have to have customer service. And unfortunately, once you start cutting that, you start cutting your services.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. Jean?
Sure, thank you. I would say we are not a revenue generating organization. And when we try to do that too much, it shows. And that's true for most governmental bodies, right? They're not very good at generating revenue. You can increase your fees, you can do better rentals, et cetera. Those are really things around the edges. John's thought of bringing in the apartment complexes, I think, is a substantial opportunity. And I would definitely support that if that was on the table. And that was something we could actually make happen. On the payroll side and the staffing side, the single thing that I would be thoughtful about would be to make sure that the people working for RA are the ones focused on customer service, talking with, touching, interacting with the RA constituents. People who are not focused on that, is there a better, cheaper, faster way to do that? Maybe. But we can't afford to contract out, for instance, customer service. That is just not something we should ever do. We really need to have people who are interacting with the constituents of the organization.
Thank you, Jean. Okay. We have another question here in the chat. Do candidates agree that both golf courses are privately owned corporations and that the land has very limited public access and perhaps not the best use of green space? I'm going to start with you, John.
No. I think it's a great use of green space. And if you own any of the townhouses, the hundreds of townhouses that back up onto those golf courses, that your ability to look out on that green sward, on that green area, is a major enhancement to your quality of life. And so the preservation of those golf courses as an active recreational area, with all of the trails that RA owns that go through those golf courses that all of our members use, are an important asset to the community, and they should be preserved. I know some people think golf is an elitist game. My kids play golf. I used to play golf. It is a valuable recreational opportunity, and it's a valuable visual amenity to the people of Reston.
Thank you, John. Margaret?
So I believe the first part of that was, are the golf courses privately owned? The answer is yes. Yes, they are. However, golf courses provide a number of advantages. The first being that they are open green space at no cost to RA members. Unless you belong to either Hidden Creek or Reston National, RA members get the benefit of that green space at no charge. The advantages for that include they reduce the heat island effect of surrounding development. They bring down the temperature in the surrounding areas. Stormwater management is huge. Those greens soak in a lot of water that would otherwise cause runoff. And of course, they do not salt those greens. Therefore, that doesn't get into our lakes and waterways. They are the lungs of Reston. And ultimately, we benefit, our animals benefit, our just being around those green spaces are good for us. That is part of the biophilic Reston.
Thank you, Margaret. And Jane?
So this is the other side of the coin, isn't it? One person asked the question, are these golf courses and should they continue to be golf courses? Another person asked the question, well, maybe they don't provide true access to the bulk of the citizens here in Reston. I think that's the kind of the job of the board, is to figure that out, how do you balance both sides of that equation? Would I say unilaterally forever until the year 5000 that those should be golf courses? I can't say that. I think that's the balance that we need to strike. And right now, I think the strike is correct. I think that what John and what Margaret both said, I agree with much of it, but I do think that these are conversations that have to continue to happen to balance the needs of the community.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. Larry, you want to start in with the next question?
I sure can. All right. Question is, some board members have argued that the board should restrict itself to the establishment of policy and budget. Others argue the board should exercise its oversight responsibility to assure things go well, and not only when things go wrong. What do you think and why? And I think we're starting with Margaret, if I'm not mistaken, on this one.
That's correct. Margaret, there you go.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'll reiterate what we've already stated a little bit earlier, is that I believe that the RA board is a governance board. We are here to provide direction and support, primarily to our CEO, but ultimately to staff through our CEO, and that it is not our role to micromanage the day-to-day operations. Again, having said that, if there are issues or concerns that we need to be involved in, that we need to make sure that things are running smoothly, absolutely. And I feel very confident that we have the leadership in place that will work with the board to see that happen.
Thank you, Margaret. Jean?
Yeah, I think activist boards can be very dangerous things, particularly boards that are not long-term, because the staff and the leadership of Reston Association many are long-term committed professionals to what they do. I think that we as a board need to provide that oversight, but it's an arm's length oversight. Certainly make audits happen, but certainly we don't want to take a stopwatch and see how fast everybody's doing their jobs. That's not what boards should do. I think focusing on that conversation and interaction with the CEO is the right place to be, and provide coaching and mentoring and support to that CEO. And then when there are issues, absolutely step in as necessary to do what's right for the organization.
Thank you, Gene. John?
So let's talk about what happens when an individual board member contacts an individual Reston Association member contacts a board member. We turn that question over to the staff, and we ask the staff to develop a response for us to forward back to the member. And that's an important way of the board being aware what the membership concerns are, and we all get copied on those responses, and for the membership to be able to get their concerns addressed. And if that concern results in some kind of analysis of a policy directive, then the board would take it up. And so I think the way it's working so far as getting input from the membership has done pretty well. I think the survey that we're going to do in May is going to enable us to have a much better sense of where all of our members want to go with the direction of our Parks and Recs. But I think at the end of the day, we're here to interact with the CEO and give that CEO our policy input.
Thank you, John. All right. Next, we have a question here from the chat. Should RA consider purchasing at least one of the Reston golf courses or contribute towards a purchase in exchange for addition of open space, preserving provisions to deed or other legal documents generated during ownership transfer? First, we're going to start with Gene.
So this is a perfect example of listening to new ideas. I can't say that we should. I think I would be on the side of saying we may not have that kind of financial wherewithal to be able to buy land in a metropolitan city like ours here, to be able to pay what the going rate might be for something like that. But would that be a good idea if the golf course went under and that land was totally unused? Maybe. I think those are the questions that need to be constantly considered, thoughtfully evaluated, and discussions continue on. Now, we don't want to talk about this every single week. I agree with that. But it's not an issue that's closed forever. Here, with the information I have right now, my answer to the question is no. I don't believe that's the right investment that RA should make at this point.
Thank you, Gene. John?
Well, the short answer is they're not for sale. Both of those golf courses are doing very well economically. And I wouldn't want to have to pay or have the membership pay to reward the current owners for the amount of income that's generated by both of those golf courses. Now, one of them is a membership. Hidden Creek is a membership. Reston National is a open to the public golf course. And so they're, based on everything I hear in the private sector, they're doing just fine. Now, if the day ever comes when they're no longer doing just fine and the owners want to, quote unquote, unload them, there's at least three entities I can think of who might take a look at that situation. One would be RA, of course. The other one might be the Reston Community Center. And the third would be the Fairfax County Park Authority. But that day is a long way off. And when that day comes, if it ever comes, that would be a topic for discussion among the three entities to see which of the three of us could have the ability or the wherewithal to take on that burden or challenge.
Thank you, John. Margaret?
Okay. So to start with, those golf courses, they're developer owned at the moment, and if you're willing to give them the amount of money they want, they'll take it. However, it's a ridiculous amount of money. They bought golf courses. It's, they've tried to develop them. They've been told no. They need to take their losses. My mother is Constance Harkey, who is the current president of Rescue Reston. I happen to know that there are groups and individuals who have offered to buy those golf courses for a reasonable amount of money, and the developers said no because they think that they're going to get their way. Those golf courses are successful golf courses. They are profitable. There are people who are willing to buy them for the price of a golf course and run them as a golf course, and that's exactly where it should stand.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. We're going to go into our next submitted question here. Name one critical issue facing RA today. State why it is critical and how you would approach it. We're going to start with John.
Wow, one?
Just one.
Just one? Well, I think for the future of Reston Association, the future of our community, I think the biggest issue is the master plan. That master plan will determine how our community evolves over the next 10, 20 years. I mean, that's about as long as a horizon you can practically deal with. And so making sure that that plan continues to permit the evolution of Reston in a way that benefits all the current people who live here and the people who will live here over the next 20 years, I think that's the most important issue. But then again, I have training as a planner. Of course I'd say that, but I really do believe that's the most important issue facing Reston.
Thank you, John. Margaret?
There are, as John mentioned, there are many pieces of the puzzle that are extremely important. One critical issue that I think we are absolutely facing is aging infrastructure. We have to figure out how to either maintain, refurbish, repair, or update our facilities and amenities. And we need to take a very strong look at what does that mean. It will take money to either maintain, refurbish, repair, and/or update. And we have to take a very close look at how do we do that in a realistic manner that allows us to continue moving forward and be a Reston association, be a Reston for the future. And so, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that we have to take a very strong look at what that means and how we're going to get there.
Thank you, Margaret. Jean?
John, I'm going to disagree with you here. Sorry about that. I don't think the master plan is the number one issue. I think Margaret's got her finger on it, really. That I'm concerned that we've got a substantial built environment. And are we investing what's necessary to make it last another 50 years? Keeping it secure, keeping it up to date regarding safety for children, et cetera. I'm also concerned about things that are maybe one step removed, but let's use Lake Anne as an example, and the homeowners association and the critical needs that community has right now. I understand it's not RA's problem, if you will, but I think it's emblematic of an organization like ours that's been around for 60, 70 years, and they've not really been able to prepare for the future. Which kind of brings us back to John's point. Okay, strategic planning is critically important, but I think it's that infrastructure is the nearest term thing that we have to think about.
Thank you, Jean.
You bet.
All right. Larry, you want to ask the next question here?
Sure. So one of Reston Association's core values is stewardship, including that of its financial resources. How best can Reston Association assure the RA's annual budget remains aligned with the needs of the membership? And again, I think we go to Margaret on this.
We're going to John.
Oh, John. Okay.
Okay. Margaret, I'm sorry. I'm answering the first twice in a row. Forgive me. So the answer is we do a budget every 2 years, and the reality is we do a budget every year. And so we then look at how does our demand by our members for services, like extending pool hours as one example, or providing a longer pool season as another example. How can we best fund that without having the assessment blow up and go much higher than anybody wants it to go? So you have to do the balance. I think over the years, we have struck that balance. When you compare our assessment to what it costs you to join an adjacent pool or tennis club, we're about half what the going rate is to join one of those facilities. And we give you 15 pools and 54 tennis courts and 1,650 acres of open space. And that's a pretty good value for the assessment that we collect.
Thank you, John. Margaret?
Thank you. So, RA's annual budget, it's a topic. It's a topic that comes up every year. It's a big topic every 2 years. But the reality is that the board, along with all RA members and staff, need to take a realistic look at that budget. What is important to us? What do we want to continue funding? What do we no longer care about? And while no one wants to significantly increase the dues ever, we also have to be able to fund facilities effectively. So we need to find a balance of what does that look like? How do we get there? We need to be sustainable for many years to come without depleting our reserves or keeping the assessment artificially low, which is absolutely not sustainable. And unfortunately, we have seen that over the years. So it is a conversation that needs to be had with all members, and we need to come to an agreement as to what we want the future to look like, and it needs to be sustainable.
Thank you. And Jean?
What John said and what Margaret said, both important, both agree with. I want to focus on one point that Larry made in his question, though. He said the demands of the services of the community. My experience with surveys is they're miserable documents. Almost nobody fills out a survey. If we have a survey which responds with 10% of the input of the Restonians, that's not an accurate survey. So I think what we need to get our heads around is how do we really take the pulse of what people want? Obviously, Margaret is absolutely right. You got to balance what people want with what we can afford to deliver. Absolutely. It's got to be held long-term. You got to be careful not to overcommit and not deliver something. But I don't know that we know what the community wants. I mean, I think that's something that we need to put some energy into figuring out, making sure that survey is truly representative of what the community wants.
Brittany, can I follow up on that? We got to follow up, right?
Yes. Each person has 30 seconds. You can go ahead and start, John.
So that's why we've engaged a professional polling company to design a poll and to execute it so that it accurately reflects all of our membership, not just one demographic, but all of the demographics. And that's why I was so insistent. We've never done that. And that's why I'm so insistent that we do it. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it in May.
And if I may, Brittany?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, very quick. I agree, John. I think that's a good idea. I am concerned that those surveys, even professionally run, can be very, a little bit, not biased intentionally, not saying that, just not representative of really what the community is looking for. So again, I don't have an answer to that question, but I do think doing a professional survey makes really good sense to go down that path.
I have to stop you there.
And
Okay, Margaret, did you want to tack on to that?
yeah, just my quick 30 seconds. Jean, I absolutely respect your thought process on that. I will say that the PrAC committee has done a great job working with our outside partner to come up with a really strong plan to get that survey out there, not only media, email, website, social media, but also we're going to have feet on the ground, people at the different venues, pools, perhaps around the lakes or some of our facilities, reaching out in person saying, please fill out this survey, including having tablets available that people can actually fill
Please.
it out right then and there.
Gonna have to call time. Thank you. Okay, thank you all. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our next question here. The next question is one that's been entered in the chat, and it says, will the winning candidate sell or keep the lake house? Okay, so to start, we're gonna go with Margaret.
Yeah, so if I win at this time, I have no thoughts on selling it. It is a rental. I was actually just at an event there this weekend where a third party had rented it. It does bring in revenue. Do I agree that there were some mistakes made many years ago at this point? Absolutely. I also know that there were many lessons learned. There are a number of people that were involved with that who are no longer with RA, and those people who are still with RA and moving forward with RA take those lessons very seriously. And if it were to be raised that we should consider selling the lake house via some particular reason, then I'd certainly look at it. But at this time, I have no intention of thinking that would be coming up.
Jean?
As far as I know, it was privately designed and privately built. It was not an initial core part of the RA infrastructure. I would actively evaluate that if it were an opportunity.
Thank you, Jean. And John?
So anybody who was around at the time we bought the lake house, I opposed buying the lake house, not because I was opposed to acquiring the structure, but because we were paying way too much for that property. Bill Lauer is a good friend of mine, God rest his soul. And I think that we could have gotten that building for a lot less money. Now that we own it and we borrowed money to buy it, and now we're paid off the loan, the challenge now is to how to make it a useful facility for the community. The interior layout is not the best when it comes to using it for various and sundry purposes. I've tried to use it several times, and it just doesn't work. The inside of it does for the meetings I was trying to hold in the lake house. So we really need to figure out how to make that facility an effective asset to the community. It also is true that it's possible that the area immediately adjacent to the lake house could be a boat ramp for people to access Lake Newport.
Okay, thank you, John.
Brittany, may I?
Yes, you have 30 seconds.
Great. So again, John and I are on little different sides of that coin. Just because the decision was made X number of years ago doesn't mean we have to live with that decision. Now, some things which are core to RA, absolutely. I think the lake house, frankly, was an appendage. It was something that a board decided and a CEO decided to acquire. If it doesn't meet our needs, trying to make the best use of it doesn't make sense. All depends on, is it a viable property for sale? If it's not a viable property for sale, I totally understand the perspective. Let's make the best of it. But if it's a viable property, we should consider that.
Thank you. Margaret? Did you want to make a statement?
I stand by my statement that I enjoyed my event there this weekend, and I know that it gets used and rented. And, I hope that we will continue to make it an available space until the decision comes to sell it or not sell it. And agree, looking at, adding a boat ramp for that lake is certainly one option to consider for the future if we can afford it.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, we're going to move on to our next submitted question. RA has asserted by resolution that Reston's 2 golf courses should be maintained as such and not developed, What benefits other than the opportunity to play golf do these courses represent for Reston residents? And you guys have kind of already answered this question, but if you want to go ahead, we can answer this one, or we can move to another one if you feel like it's just repetitious.
I feel like it's repetitious personally, but I'll defer to John and Margaret, certainly.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay. Next
As we
question.
say in court sometimes, asked and answered.
Yes.
More than once.
Next
And
question.
since the gentleman got their 2 cents, I'll throw in that I'm also okay, since I was able to explain what I think are the benefits to the golf course. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to ask another question then. How should the board evaluate members' use of facilities such as pools, pathways, and tennis courts? Furthermore, if the membership desires a new facility, how should it be evaluated? I'm going to start with Jean.
How do we evaluate members' use in terms of keeping track of how many people use the pools, keeping track of how many people use the tennis courts? My presumption is that our RA team does a great job of understanding use patterns. So I'm not going to address that part of the question. I think the other part of the question and the boat ramp at Lake Newport is a good question, right? I mean, that's a good example. If people want a boat ramp at Lake Newport, people should come forward and say that that is something that the community needs. It should be brought forward to the board and the appropriate RA staff, and we should consider whether that is something that's going to be good for the community, and evaluate the cost of it. And if we can afford it, we should do it. So that's how I would look at it. I'm a pickleball player, and so I'm looking forward to more pickleball courts at some point in the future here in Reston Association. So maybe I'll start a petition for that as well.
Thank you, Jean. John?
So, Jane, you'll be glad to know that we have an opportunity in front of us for an indoor pickleball facility at the Roland Clark rezoning. And so hopefully we can figure out a way to make that happen, whether RA owns it or RCC. It appears that the Park Authority is not interested, but it's an opportunity and hopefully we'll pursue it. I've actually been involved in this analysis. Back in, I think it was 2010, I spent the better part of 2 years looking at the feasibility of having an indoor tennis facility. And ultimately, we spent a lot of money with Mike, I think it's Mike Miller, thank you, to design such an indoor facility at Lake Newport to fundamentally enclose the Lake Newport tennis courts. At the end of the day, it turned out that it would cost us over $5 million to enclose those tennis courts. And it also, we found out, would not generate a whole lot of usage from all of our membership. The usage level would be very, very low.
1 minute.
So the board decided not to go forward with that. So I've been through that process and I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. Thank you. Margaret?
Yeah, so as far as how we currently evaluate members' use of facilities, with pools, it's actually straightforward. We do have the card system. If unfortunately the card system is down, staff is supposed to track it manually as to who. Tennis courts are a little bit different, although we do have the cards with the passes for tennis. We don't have card readers at the different venues. Some of the courts do track how many people come in and out. So, do I think we could probably look at doing a better job of tracking that information? Absolutely. However, that costs money. Okay, whether you're doing it by staff or you're doing it by electronics. So is that something that the membership wants to spend its money on? Maybe, maybe not. The other, of course, is, for example, that PRAC survey that we've already mentioned coming up, those types of things, input that way. Ultimately, any new facilities that were to come, we would need to evaluate. We would want informed discussions that include member desires. And in my opinion, we must have proper funding, both immediate and long-term.
Okay. Thank you so much, Margaret. Okay. And we still have some time here on the clock for some additional questions. So I'm going to jump into our next question from the chat. and that is, let me scroll down here. Okay. May I ask the following? Moving beyond the golf course spaces, what more do you think the RA can and should be doing to protect and maintain the other open and green spaces, trails, and other natural lands within Reston? And how much of a focus should this be for the board amid its many competing priorities? Okay. And I do believe for this question first up, I have John.
Sure. When we have done some inexact polling, it turns out that the most used facility we have are our trails. And those trails, an essential part of our trail system, are all of the bridges that RA has to maintain and renew over their time. Many of them are wooden and many of them deteriorate over time. So I think it's essential that we carefully look at the maintenance of our trail system. A long time ago, we looked at doing stream restoration. The first effort was a little bit more intrusive than I think we've discovered it needs to be in order to restore our streams. And I think we've come up with a better model in the Glade and in other locations to restore our streams and at the same time preserve as much of our open space, of our trees and our understory cover as possible in the course of preparing those stream restorations. So I think we can continue that effort.
Okay, thank you, John. Next up, we have Margaret.
Thank you. The reality is that our open spaces are extremely important. Trails, of course, being a huge piece of that. And we do work hard to maintain those. As far as protecting other open spaces, I'm not sure specifically if you mean like the areas around the garden plots or the areas around some of our fields, that type of thing. At this point, as far as I know, there's no intention to develop any of those. And so we do work hard to maintain and protect those. We work with other organizations in the area. For example, Great Falls Reston Soccer uses many of our soccer fields. They actually technically use all of them, though some of our fields are not great shape. And so because of that, the ones that are good enough for them to use on a regular basis for either games or practices, they actually do help maintain some. And that includes mowing them extra. So we actively work not only amongst ourselves with our central services facilities to maintain those, but also with other groups in the area to make sure that those spaces are utilized, protected, and stay as they should be.
Okay, thank you. And then Jean.
Sure. I think the benefit of going third, I can say yes and yes. John's right on, Margaret's right on. I do think the green space is, frankly, while I'm here, it is such a beautiful community, and it's because of that green space. I use the paths every single day. I do think that infrastructure investment, sometimes paths get kind of pushed down on the path in terms of the level of priority. I do think if you looked at what's used most, it's probably used more than anything else, like John said. I do think that investment in that long-term maintenance and operation of those paths is critically important. I don't think there's any new green space to be had here in Reston, so we have what we have. But I do think maintaining it and investing in it is critically important.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Okay, next is Larry. Did you want to ask your next question?
Sure. Recently, RA created a working group on equity and the RA Lakes, and its formation is pending the selection of applicants who will form the group. What do you understand is the purpose or role of this group? I think we start with Margaret again, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, so the Lakes Equity Group, I'm kind of excited about it. My understanding of that group is that it is our chance to take a hard and close look at whether or not RA is providing equitable access to all of our lakes for all of our members. So RA members as a whole help pay for those lakes. Therefore, all RA members should have active use of those lakes, however that looks. So part of this Lakes Equity Group is, what does that look like? What do we need to do better? What do we need to add additional docks? Do we need to add additional signage, picnic tables, trash cans? What can we do to make sure that the RA members who are helping to pay for those RA lakes have equitable access to them, not just the private properties that live on or around?
Brittany, you're muted.
Next, we have Jean.
Sure. Thanks. I have not been intimately involved in that initiative. I'm a little concerned about the fact that that initiative is something that's coming in from the outside. I was kind of thinking that that would be something the staff would be on top of already. And we as an organization here for the benefit of our constituents, and my view should be doing that already. Now, I will admit that I don't have the details. Margaret certainly is much closer to that than I am. But I would be interested in understanding that. I completely agree with the objectives of the initiative. And maybe it's a combination of a RA with the community engaged. I think that's great. I would like to know why it's being engaged specifically now. And we'll have to look into that myself.
Thank you, Jean. John?
So this initiative came from our president and other board members. It did not come from the outside. And it was exactly as Margaret described it. There is limited access to a number of our lakes. Lake Newport is one, but we're providing enhanced access at Lake Thoreau as we rebuild the Lake Thoreau pool. Believe it or not, there is a public boat ramp at Lake Ann, but I dare you to go find it and tell me where it is. I've been on it. I know where it is, but good luck trying to find it. And it may just be a matter of opening it up and doing some pruning of the trees so people know where it is. But we have 4 lakes. Lake Audubon is pretty accessible. We've got a boat ramp and places to park. And so, we can probably enhance the access for all of our members to all 4 of our lakes. And just a matter of working through how that gets done. But it was an internal initiative of the board, and I'm very supportive of it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, we're going to move on to our next question in the chat. I have Sarah Silverage D'Souza, who would like to ask a question. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. You have 10 seconds to ask your question.
Thank you, Brittany. That was the perfect segue. First, I want to thank the candidates for being here. And I've been told by 2 long RA members or staff that this has not been done before and could be dicey. So here I go, rolling the dice. Do you have any suggestions or ideas to improve our board meetings and specifically to increase engagement? We see Laura David now frequently, and we have more people like Laura who start joining our meetings. For the candidates, any ideas? We're all ears. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we're going to start with Eugene.
Sure. I obviously can't answer that question directly because I've not been in one of the board meetings, so I don't have a direct answer to that question. I do have insight, however, to other meetings that I've been in. I know that we as a Covenants Committee pretty consistently suggested process improvements to the RA staff as they ran the committee meetings, and they were very open and very collaborative, and it worked just great. My experience is collaboration is what's going to be key. Make sure that everybody gets their voice heard, and make sure that it's not an unbalanced hearing. One person doesn't speak the whole time. and everybody else runs out of time because, as we all know, everything is timed these days, including these questions and answers. So I don't have anything else to say specifically about that particular board, but hopefully I get a chance to do that.
Thank you, Gene. John?
Well, Madam President, I think you've done a fabulous job of making our meetings much more effective. I think the initiative to have the PowerPoint presentations, which used to drone on for 8 hours and sometimes longer, having them recorded in advance so that the board can look at them before the beginning of the meeting, and then when we're in executive session, they play for the members to observe. The thing that I puzzle over is, by having the member comments at the very beginning of the meeting before we reach any specifics, I don't know that that's, I mean, the statute says we have to have member comments. I'm not sure if we wouldn't be better off to let people have a comment when we reach an agenda item, to say to people, hey, if you're, much like the DRB does, if you have a generalized comment, you can make that comment at the beginning of the night. But if you have a comment that's specific to an agenda item, we're going to give you an opportunity to be heard when that agenda item comes up.
Thank you, John. And Margaret?
So actually, I like John's idea. As far as community engagement, you know, that is certainly a question that we have asked in numerous ways, numerous times about numerous things: listening sessions, candidate forums, elections, everything. I think the biggest piece is we as a group, as an organization, need to start touching base with the community more often and more effectively. Now, what does that exactly look like? That's a great question. But I do feel that as I've been campaigning and talking to people one-on-one, reaching out to them with my door hangers, I'm getting a lot more feedback. And I feel that perhaps over the years, people stopped attending for various reasons, and we need to try and personally figure out a way to invite them back in.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay.
Enjoy Cancun.
All right, we're going to go to our next question here in the chat. And that question is, we've heard some say that RA should force the new residences along the transit station areas to join RA, thinking that all these new members' dues would allow for a reduction in our annual assessment. The question is, how can the RA board force a property that is not under RA covenants to join RA? That's the first half of this question. And the second half of this question is, isn't it true that just because a development plan is approved, it can still make years or decades before it is built and occupied? And I think we have going up first this time is John.
The second half of the question is yes. And as markets change, even markets have changed since most of those approvals were granted. COVID and the ability to work from home has had a real impact on the amount of office space we're going to build. But here's the answer. The comprehensive plan, the current comprehensive plan, already says that any new residential development in the Silver Line area is supposed to either join RA or join RTC. That provision is already there. The problem has been that that provision of the comprehensive plan was not enforced by the prior member of the Board of Supervisors. So it's persuasion. It's explaining to the supervisor that having the new apartments join is in the best interest of the county. After all, the county is the largest owner of all apartments in Reston, and those apartments pay our assessment. So it's about, it has a major impact on the county when some apartments aren't being made to join as part of the zoning process.
Thank you, John. Margaret?
Yeah, so as John alluded to, around 2015, the previous supervisor for the 100 Mill District for Fairfax County decided to allow owners within the TSA to choose. Unfortunately, that would have been the best time to put the foot down and say you need to join RA or RTC. Unfortunately, at that time, the developers won. So we need to work collaboratively with the current supervisor, developers, new homeowners to help them see the benefit of joining RA. There's no way that we can force them to, but we certainly do have the ability to try and explain to them why it would benefit them. And that includes access to the amenities and facilities, while adding all of those people in would bring in more money. Also keep in mind that they also bring in more use. More use means that there's more maintenance, there's more upkeep. So it is a double-edged sword in that sense. And we just need to find that balance and also work with them to move forward.
Thank you, Margaret. And Jean?
Going third again, I agree with both John and Margaret. So I really don't have anything to add to that other than I do think an active campaign to encourage these folks to join, I think would be very important. I think making the value proposition, almost creating a sales campaign for it would be very beneficial. And I think we could have a positive impact there.
Brittany, can I get 30 seconds?
Sure.
Most of these developments that are approved back in 2015 and others are going to come back in. What they got approved back in 2015 doesn't match the current market demand. So as they come back through for what we call a proffer condition amendment, effectively a rezoning, we'll get another shot. And we need to take that shot to try and get all of the apartments to become part of RA.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, did you want to add on?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we're going to move to our next submitted question here. The past board approved the position of a senior environmental director for RA, and the present CEO has issued a call for applicants for that position. What do you see as the primary role for that person? Okay, and to start, we're going to go with Margaret.
Thank you. Sorry. So the environmental director, and my understanding and goal for the environmental director would be to provide leadership, to allow us to move forward in ways that are not only environmentally friendly, but environmentally sound, to provide guidance to all of Reston as an organization. And basically, I would rely on their expertise and knowledge to help move us forward to the future of Reston and what we can do to be not only more environmentally friendly, but environmentally sound. We sort of did that a little bit when, or we did a lot when we with Friends of Reston when Walker Nature Center was built. And I look forward to seeing that continue in new projects and the upgrade of current facilities and amenities.
Margaret. Jean?
I think the role is pretty clear. Should be somebody who comes to the table with a lot of policy experience, but also experience in working through others. The practices of how we do the stream enhancements, the practices is how we clean out culverts, the practices of how do we maintain lakes, et cetera. You know, those are all practices that exist today. This person that comes in will have to work with the existing RA staff and the teams and provide that expertise, but they need to be able to work through them and not be the individual that's out there doing everything themselves. So it's really important that the kind of people that we hire here is really a collaborative leader, but they become the expert within the Reston Association for others to lean on, as well as to help paint the road for what it is we're trying to get done going forward. Thank
you, Jean. And John?
So one of the ways that we've used, that I have interacted with the environmental expert, and by the way, it's my understanding that we're pretty far down the road as far as hiring that person. One of the ways that I have interacted with that position in the past has been in working through replacement plantings. As trees die and as other plants need to be replaced, what would be an appropriate plant for my cluster to put in to replace the tree that died? And so one of the other things is recently we started talking about the removal of invasive species. Well, a lot of the invasive species were put here by the regional developers. How do we do that? How does a cluster or RA get rid of the English ivy and the pachysandra and the other plants that we've since determined are invasive? So, I mean, I see that as a role for the environmental advisor.
Thank you, John. Okay. And going to go into, we have time for one more question, and then we're going to go into our closing remarks. The next question that I have here is, if elected, can you fully commit now that you will perform the full term of your obligation, barring death, illness, or a required move out of RA territory? And I do believe next, as we have Jean making.
Oh, sure. Make me answer that one first. So I think what you're really asking for me to do is prick my finger and put it on a piece of paper, right? My intent is to perform the duties. I'm not going to make that specific commitment, of course, but certainly if I'm unable to, for whatever valid reasons, I will communicate with the team and express my concerns or personal situations. But it is my intent to fully execute the responsibilities that I would be entrusted with.
Thank you, Jean. Next, we have John.
The answer is yes. Short of somebody coming along and killing me, and maybe that would be Ed Abbott. Ed and I are long friends, so that's not going to happen. But yeah, I
Don't be so sure.
So no, I wouldn't be running if I wasn't ready to serve for the full 3 years. And I think I'm allowed to, if I get elected, to run for re-election. So it's my intention to serve out the full 3 years and then seek another 3 years. And hopefully that'll come to pass.
Thank you, John. And Margaret?
So I do recognize why this question was asked. I mean, we have had a number of seats come open. Both John and I are appointed members of the board currently due to open seats from people for stepping down for various reasons, including we had just had, one occur again since the two of us have been on the board. So I do think it is a legitimate question, and the answer is yes. I absolutely intend to serve all 3 years. My children actually have 6 more years before I'm allowed to move out of the area, should I desire, because I've been told that they will graduate from South Lakes High School, according to them. So there is no intention at this time that I would not be able to fulfill this commitment.
All right. Thank you, Margaret. Okay. And that concludes our question and answer portion for this evening. I do realize that there are a few of you who've had quite a few questions here in the chat. Some of you have submitted questions ahead of time. As I noted in the beginning of the meeting, we received around 30 or so questions, and we wanted to make sure that everyone at least had the opportunity to have one of those questions asked and answered tonight. So please don't be discouraged. Those questions that you've submitted will be also utilized in our candidates forum for tomorrow. So if you tune in, then you may just hear some of those questions being asked tomorrow evening. We're going to go into our closing remarks from our candidates. And as I noted earlier, one of our candidates is not in attendance this evening. And so that did kind of throw things off this evening. And you might have, I'm going through and crossing names and checking names off my list to try to make sure I'm giving everyone an opportunity to answer tonight. So I appreciate your patience. So to start off with our closing remarks, we have John.
Well, thank you, Brittany. And
Yeah.
thank
3
you.
minutes.
3 minutes. I don't think I'll take that quite that long. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Ed, Larry, and all the staff thank you to all of my fellow board members who have been watching these proceedings. And I expect to get a full critique as soon as they ring off to tell me all the mistakes I made. There may be more than one. And thank you for listening, because without you all paying attention, we don't have a clue whether or not we're doing things right. Among the other, and I alluded to this, among the other initiatives that we're looking at is providing that Roland Clark redevelopment. It would add to our open space, as well as add to a facility that we could use to provide indoor pickleball opportunities for our membership. Who runs it? I don't know. I mean, that's something to have a conversation with RCC and the Park Authority. I'm proud and happy to be a supporter of Rescue Reston, and a supporter of Reston Strong, and a supporter of CPR, and a supporter of SOS, and all the other alphabet organizations of all the citizens that we have here in Reston. They give me important input. I listen, I try to implement what they ask us to look for, and I look forward to doing that. For those of you whose questions weren't asked tonight, strike that, weren't asked and answered tonight, I want you to send me an email. It's John W. Farrell, then the number 5 @gmail.com. And I look forward to hearing your questions, and I look forward to answering them. I have been, as Margaret has been, out. I think I've distributed a couple of thousand door knockers already. I've seen Margaret's. I think Margaret's probably seen mine. And we have plenty of opportunity to interact with you. And I enjoyed the discussions with the people I meet along the way. And I look forward to meeting more of you over the next week or 10 days as the ballots get mailed out and marked and sent back. So thank you all for paying attention and listening to the three of us drone on. And hopefully it's been as worthwhile for you as it has been for the three of us. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next week, we're going to have Margaret.
Okay, thank you. It has been my honor to serve on the RA board since I was appointed in June, and I look forward to being able to continue that service over the next 3 years if our members choose me on the ballot in March. Reston has been a leader and innovator as a planned community and has been reviewed and studied by groups and individuals around the world. In order to continue to be a leader in planned communities and innovation, it is important to take a smart and realistic look at our future and the budget. This means finding ways to be cost effective while also incorporating member input and considering the long-term impact on the environment and our community. When choosing to add new facilities, we need to be realistic. We need to take a look at how we will fund and staff those resources. I also would love to see Fairfax County fund a proper rec center for our area. The Hunter Mill District in Fairfax County is the only district without a county-funded rec center. So I would invite the county to get involved. Another important aspect of maintaining a successful Reston is to ensure that members are involved in the planning process. By gathering input from our members and incorporating your feedback into the design and development of our facilities, amenities, and programs, it is possible to create a Reston that is truly reflective of our community's needs and desires now and in the future. One way to achieve this is through the use of technology and innovation by leveraging the latest advancements in sustainable materials, renewable energy sources, and smart technology. Reston can reduce costs and improve efficiency while also improving the quality of life for our residents. Finally, it is important to take a long-term view of the community and its future sustainability. This means investing in our aging infrastructure and amenities so that we are able to continue to serve the community well into the future, while also considering the impact on the environment and our budget. By taking a smart and realistic approach to community planning and budgeting, Reston can continue to be a leader locally, statewide, and globally. Visit mperry-reston.com to learn more about me, and please vote, preferably for me, between March 1st and March 31st at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, and Jean?
Thanks, Brittany, and thanks to all the folks who participated today and the RA staff and the team. I do appreciate this opportunity. Like I said in my opening remarks, I wanted to engage because I felt like there was a need. I still think there's a need. I think you can tell from my answers and John and Margaret's answers. They are absolutely more connected today with what's happening in terms of the board. There's no question about that. I think kind of the big question is going to be, is it time to bring some new and different ideas to the board? I know the two of them are acting, so they're in many ways also new to the current board. But I think that's kind of the difference, right? I mean, I know that I have a lot of studying to do, a lot of work to do. I'm a reasonably quick study. I work pretty hard. I've been doing this long enough that I understand how boards work and how to have value when it comes to delivering that value for boards and for constituencies. I really think that the process that you folks are running here is very positive and very engaging. I really want to support that. I think this is a wonderful place to live. How do we keep making it better? One of those ways is to not lose what we have. And I think all three of us agree investment in our built infrastructure is absolutely critical. Investment in our RA team is absolutely critical. You know, the hiring of a new environmental policy lead is a wonderful step down the path in terms of continuing to raise the capability of the RA team itself. So I'm a huge supporter from the very beginning of this conversation, almost 2 hours ago now. I said I want somebody to help the institution. I think John would do a great job. Margaret would do a great job. I think I would do a great job. Each of us will do it a little bit differently. And I too hope that you get a really good response, and certainly please get the 10% response as a minimum. But I do think that getting some energy and enthusiasm in the community is a great thing. And any one of the three of us, I think, will do a very good job and do what's best for the community. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Gene. And I want to say thank you to everyone who attended this evening, to all of our candidates who took the time to prepare themselves for some of these questions this evening, to all of our staff who participated this evening, to our elections committee chair, and to all of their residents who attended this evening to submit questions that they believe are important for the betterment of RA. And just a friendly reminder, if you had a question that was asked this evening and you want to make sure that that question is answered at the next candidates forum, please email us at electionscommittee@reston.org so that we can add those questions to our list. I did try to get a few of them that were asked in the chat, but I may have missed some. So please feel free to reach out to us at electionscommittee@reston.org. And also, I just want to remind everyone who's on tonight, don't forget to vote. Voting opens March 1st through March 31st. It's very, very important that we make quorum. I know that you guys were asking about expenses. We don't want to have this expense again. So please do your part. Make sure that you get out and vote. Voting starts at March 1st at 5 p.m. And so be on the lookout for that information. Okay. Thank you all so much. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. Ed, did you have a few comments that you wanted to make?
I do not.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.